There have been so many reports come out just recently talking about the Chicago Bulls' plans come the trade deadline. But with the Zach LaVine injury update that we're going to get into in this video, it could really change things for the Bulls. But that could also mean that the expiring contract of DeMar DeRozan could be moved sooner rather than later. I'm your host, Joey Mercer. This is another episode of Bulls Digest. And before we get into it there today, I just want to say that about 85% of you that watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel, so make sure if you aren't already subscribed to go down below, hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell for notifications, and every single time we upload, you will be able to stay up to date with your Chicago Bulls. So without further ado, let's get into the first topic at hand there today, and that is LaVine injury update. So it's no secret he's been off and on with injuries all year this year, and he's dealt with a lot of them over the past few years since really joining the Bulls, as he went down with a serious ACL injury just before joining them when he was on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, when we look further into this one, it started off, it was by KC Johnson at NBC Sports Chicago, and the tweet that caught my attention for this article was from NBA Central. Says the Chicago Bulls may need to offer additional assets if they want to offload Zach LaVine's contract. There's a growing feeling among rival executives that the Bulls may have to attach another asset to move LaVine. Something sources said the Bulls have had hesitant to do to this point. An alternative could be to merely move LaVine as a salary dump for expiring contracts, although NBC Sports Chicago has previously reported that the Bulls weren't at that stage yet. Plus, of course, it would take another team willing to do that. And that's a fair point as well. I mean, another team would be having to willingly take on that salary dump of his contract if they weren't looking to contend or use him immediately, and the health status on LaVine has kind of been up in the air, which leads us into the next article, which was Bulls Zach LaVine won't play until after the NBA trade deadline, and the foot injury to sideline two-time All-Star for at least another week, and that's what Billy Donovan had said. So yeah, I mean, that's another thing a team would have to look into and try to acquire him. They're going to try to lowball because it's a bit of a risk. It says after the trade deadline. That could be immediately after. He could be reevaluated and could be out for longer. You never know when you're taking on a guy like that on such a big contract. You need to make sure that everything is going to be in place correctly so that you're not going to be in a bad position as a franchise. The next thing we saw on this one was two-time All-Star guard Zach LaVine will rest his bothersome right foot for at least another week, sidelining the Chicago Bulls guard until after the February 8th NBA trade deadline. Coach Billy Donovan said following Friday's practice at the Advocate Center that LaVine's sprained right ankle has healed, but the right foot inflammation that cost LaVine 17 games earlier this season has returned. It's still causing him problems, so it's still going to be more time, Donovan said. The foot is inflamed and it's going to be another week before he's reevaluated again. They're hoping to quiet it down. We were all hoping it would happen a little sooner, but it hasn't. LaVine returned from his 17-game absence on January 5th and played 7 games in which the Bulls went 5-2 before rolling and spraining his right ankle. That injury and the subsequent rehabilitation process caused the foot discomfort to flare anew. And that's another thing too. I mean, people have come up with theories that maybe LaVine was sitting out to find a trade partner. It's kind of crossed my mind a few times for sure, but it really does seem like something's going on with the foot, and hopefully it isn't something too serious that would even cause surgery. I hope that Zach's back on the court as soon as possible, as if he's not going to be traded, of course, I'd like him to contribute to the team whatever way he can, and you don't want to see any player injured or out of any lineup at any time. When we come to trying to trade him as well, now that there's not really a solid timetable because he's been reevaluated a few times so far this season with different injuries, and this is one that's from the start of the year that's coming back. It's worrisome when a team's taking on that sort of a contract, and you really have to make sure that everything's in place. I mean, Zach LaVine's not on exactly a small contract, but at least you know he's still going to be there next season, and that's really what a team might be looking to do if they aren't a contender. The next thing we saw on this was, it bugs you, a bony prominent area, LaVine said then. You really don't want to start messing around with that fifth metatarsal area, and it gets more and more irritated. It's just smart to calm it down now to where I can get back to 100% and hopefully finish the season strong and help everybody out. While the optics of LaVine's injury could be tied by some conspiracy theorists to the trade deadline, the guard has talked publicly and privately about lingering discomfort. Asked if it was will be a season-long issue, Donovan said he didn't want to speculate. It's just going to be how he responds, Donovan said. And, it's fair. LaVine's not going to come out and say if it's anything too serious unless reports are leaked about it, or unless he absolutely has to because he's out for a very prolonged period of time, and not just being reevaluated on a week-to-week basis. That's just how many athletes, of course, are going to respond to something like that, especially with the trade deadline around the corner and knowing that the front office is trying to move him. He doesn't want to fool with anything to do with the front office either, as he signed a contract with them, most importantly. Next thing we saw on this was the Bulls and LaVine agreed in early November to work to try to find him a new home. LaVine's trade market hasn't proved robust to this point, and whereas his elite play over the previous 3 seasons had mostly eliminated any concerns over his medical history, which features a torn ACL and a subsequent arthroscopic surgery on the same left knee. This season has led some rival executives to question whether trading for a max contract and player with now lingering foot issues is worth it. And once again, it's fair. You've had surgeries, and now there's another part of your body that might need surgeries because it's just a lingering issue. That's another thing that's not brought up enough about when acquiring Zach LaVine's contract. If he was producing the way he is and he was healthy all the time, I think it would be very easy to move him. Although he doesn't play a whole lot of defense, there's lots of guys in the league making similar money that don't play defense as well. And that's just my take on it, but he's a very good offensive weapon, so it would make sense for a team to take him on if they were trying to make that extra push and needed another scorer on the team. The next thing that we're going to be talking about today, which of course leads us into the second topic, is DeMar DeRozan, and that is DeMar to Philly. So it has actually come out, and we've heard a few different rumblings of Philly being tied to Chicago with different trades on the table, but now we're hearing DeMar DeRozan because they understand that his contract's expired, and Philly's trying to make that next step to really be contenders. They haven't made it past the second round since 2001 with Allen Iverson his MVP season, when they made it all the way to the finals against the Lakers and Shaq and Kobe dismantled them. Ever since then, it's been at best a second round exit, and that's not exactly what you want to see from a team with a reigning MVP, and they've had very solid teams over the past 7 or 8 years. When we look into the start of this one, it was a tweet from diehard Chicago Bulls fans saying the Sixers are willing to trade a first-round pick for DeMar DeRozan. The Bulls trade DeMar DeRozan and the Sixers trade Tobias Harris, expiring contract, and a first-round pick. And it's interesting they note that Tobias is on an expiring. I know it's because this is a diehard Chicago Bulls fan account, but when we look into it as well, DeMar is also on an expiring contract. I think the 76ers know that, and they think that they'd be able to make an extra push with DeMar over Tobias Harris on the team right now with some more shot creating to help out Maxey, as Embiid has been up and down again with injuries, which seems to have taken him out of the MVP race almost completely, as he can only miss about 5 or 6 more games for the remainder of the season, which is going to be tough with the injuries he's endured, and now sustaining another one because he made it worse by playing through what the critics said was a fake injury. We look into the next part of this, and we can see what DeMar is putting up this season. He's putting up 22 points, he's putting up about 0.7 blocks, 1 steal, about 5 assists a game, 4 rebounds, so 22, 4, and 5, very solid. He's playing 37 minutes a game. A lot of that has to do with injuries. I know it was only 36 the past 2, but that extra minute, that's definitely where that's coming from. He's taking less shots because a lot of guys are helping him out there, especially Kobe White, but more threes this season, and it's at a better percentage than last year. His first year when he played with the Bulls, of course, he was an okay three-point shooter, but now at 3 attempts a game, he's almost at league average, so he's starting to develop that aspect of his game a little bit more. This is about the best three-point shooting of his career when you look at the attempts to conversion rate, and that's great to see from DeMar DeRozan. We can also see he's shooting 47% from the field, which is down from the previous 2 years, but more three-pointers attempted could definitely be a factor when it comes to that. His free throws made this season, he's taking less a game than he usually does, but once again, less shots overall, so that makes a lot of sense where he's 2 on the free throws, still very good at drawing fouls, and 84% from the line is very good, no complaints there whatsoever. When we look into the advanced metrics on him, this is how he's performing so far this season. You can see that he's in the 41st percentile in true shooting, so just below league average. His shot quality's in the 62nd, so just above league average. His free throw rate, still one of the best in the league, as I mentioned, at the 91st percentile has a lot to do with the amount of shots he's taken this season compared to the previous two. And then we can see he doesn't take many threes at all. Should probably take a few more of those, but if he's not comfortable with it, I understand. DeMar is a mid-range maestro, for sure. Doesn't get many offensive rebounds. I don't worry too much about that. When he tries to create, he doesn't turn the ball over a lot, which is great to see. I mean, 86th percentile. He carries a good load of the offense at the 89th percentile, and his creation value at the 88th percentile is great. His portability isn't as good, but it is around league average at the 45th percentile. His passer rating has really improved this year and is at the 81st percentile, which is exactly what you'd like to see out of a guy like DeMar. When you look at his crafted OPM, it's the 89th percentile in the league for offensive plus minus, which is phenomenal. There's nothing much more that you can ask of a 34-year-old. In deflections, he's in the 41st percentile, so just below league average. He doesn't cause barely any defensive turnovers, which isn't that great. 15th percentile, 32nd percentile for defensive rebounds, not that great. Rim defense is about league average, as rim frequency is just a bit above, and his block percentage has gone up to a decent amount this season at the 68th percentile, so it's borderline good. His versatility isn't that great on defense, and he doesn't foul often, but he doesn't play a whole lot of defense either. He's in the 10th percentile for defense this season, and overall, defense has definitely been the weakness of DeMar's career. That and the three-point shooting, but that's starting to somewhat come around here now, as I expect him to be a little bit more of a catch-and-shoot threat as the years go on now for him at this age. When we look into the next thing, we're going to look at Tobias Harris, and you can see here this season that he's up to where he was about 2 years ago in points per game at 18 a game. He's only taken 13 shots, and he's shooting 51% from the field. That's been great. Playing 34 minutes a game, pretty much the same as 2 years ago. And he's also shooting 34% from three, which is a bit rough for Tobias Harris. He's taking less threes at that as well, and he shot so much better from three last season at 39%. I would expect if you were to be traded that number could go up, and hopefully he could flourish a little bit more with the Chicago Bulls offense. He is shooting 90% from the free throw line, as he's very good at that aspect over his career, and seems to just be getting better on almost a yearly basis. He's up to more free throws this season as he's taken less threes and more twos, and 3.5 a game is solid. It's about an average rate, and the 90% conversion is very, very good. Putting up 18, 6, and 3, that's pretty solid numbers from Tobias, as he's really picked things up as of late. We can look at the next part of this too when we look at the advanced stats for Tobias Harris and see that his true shooting percentage is much better than DeMar's this season, the 69th percentile. That's good. Shot quality is 79th percentile. His free throw rate is much lower at the 55th percentile, and he only attempts 10% more threes in that 10th percentile higher category, that is, than DeMar DeRozan. His offensive rebounds are not very good either at the 30th percentile. But if we quickly go down, you can see his defensive rebounds are in the 87th percentile, which is very, very good. We can also see that when he tries to create things, he turns the ball over a little often. 57th percentile, it's about league average. The load isn't that high at the 65th. And creation at 66, it really shows that he's about a third or fourth guy on a team to be creating offense. His portability is a bit higher because of his shot creating ability from around the mid-range and three, and that's at the 74th percentile, and his passer rating, league average at the 56th percentile. Overall, on offense, he's in the 80th percentile, which is still a very good offensive player. The biggest difference for him and DeRozan is the defense, though. He doesn't get any deflections in comparison to DeRozan, and is quite bad at that, the 16th percentile, and doesn't cause many defensive turnovers at the 24th percentile, but is a very good defensive rebounder, about league average rim defense. Goes for rim frequency the same as DeRozan at the 62nd percentile. I think that's a 1 percentile difference. And when we look at block percentage, it's about league average at the 48th percentile. And his versatility on defense is very high at the 83rd percentile. Fits very well within a team defense. And his rate of personal fouling is hardly anything when he's actually guarding players on a nightly basis at the 93rd percentile. And 67th percentiles overall. that means he's a solid defender. I would take Tobias Harris on the Bulls for sure in that aspect. I think he could help them a little bit more than DeRozan could right now. We need some more spacing as opposed to shot creating if we were to keep Zach LaVine around. And I could definitely see a trade like this going down. And that makes a whole lot of sense for the Bulls, not only now, but for the future. And that's something that I would agree with here at Bulls Digest as your host, Joey Mercer. So this is going to be it for this video here today. And if you did enjoy it, make sure to go down below, like the video, comment on the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on that bell for notifications, and I'll see you all in the next one.